Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Substack Live at the Sustainable Media Center. My name is Emma Lemke, and I serve as the Director of Gen Z Advocacy at SMC. I'm so honored to be joining conversation today with the founders and leaders of the Social Media Victims Remembrance Day, held this past Tuesday, Amy Neville and Kristen Bride. So, a little bit more about today's conversationalists. So, Amy and Kristen have become leading advocates in the fight to hold big tech accountable after the loss of their sons due to harms connected to social media. They both have turned grief into action and co-founded the Social Media Victims Remembrance Day on June 23rd as a way to honor the lives of those lost to social media and demand action from lawmakers and companies to address these issues online. So now for today's conversation, there's a lot that I want to unpack and dive into, especially as it relates to the work that you both are doing advocating for change at the legislative level. But before we take a deeper dive, let's allow listeners to get to know you a little bit better beyond just the cookie cutter intro that I gave. So start us out, both of you, by walking listeners through some of the advocacy work that you do today and why Social Media Victims Remembrance Day is so meaningful to you. We'll start with you, Amy.
Uh, well, the advocacy I do today is really rooted in helping other folks. I mean, it's been a long road. We've been fighting on the Kids Online Safety Act. I started advocating and working on drug prevention legislation, whether it be for PSAs or getting education into schools, and for mitigating the drug supply, really trying to reduce what is coming into our country in a way that makes sense. Because right now, most 80% of the drugs that come in through with American citizens. It's not even the traditional border issue that we are being fed on this topic. So it's a lot to deal with. But I primarily work in communities and in schools, educating young people and communities on the dangers of social media and the drug crisis. And all of the work that I do is rooted in the youth voice, meaning that I do listening sessions and work with youth to design what it is that we put out because I want it to resonate with them. I don't want to waste their time, nor do I want to waste mine for that matter. But that's the short of it.
Absolutely. And what about you, Kristen?
So I really started out working on the Kids Online Safety Act and dedicated the last 3 years, 4 years of my life walking the halls, thinking that this was the ultimate approach to kids' online safety. If we could get something at the federal level, then we didn't have to go state to state. And unfortunately, that dream died when the Speaker Johnson did not bring COSA to a House floor vote, even though it would have passed at the end of 2024. And since then, I've realized the value of advocating for state legislation. States are more nimble and things move quickly. Or more quickly. And I started my own nonprofit just a year ago, realizing that I wanted to have my own voice and really focus on tiny tech because that was the app that harmed my son. He was anonymously cyberbullied on YOLO, a small anonymous app that was put on Snapchat. And nobody's really focusing on that. So that's of interest to me. And now we have AI chatbot apps that are small and doing the same harm. These apps kind of hide under the surface and go viral quickly and do as much harm as the larger ones.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I grew up and with those on my Snapchat too, and it's to your point, it's no one's really putting a lot of energy or effort, I think, towards investigating like the nefarious nature of a lot of those platforms. So very grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing. I'm curious on how have social media companies specifically, and then we'll talk about lawmakers next, but how have social media companies responded or failed to respond to families like yours? Starting with you, Kristen.
Well, it's sad that it took this, but we filed a class action lawsuit against Snapchat and YOLO and LMK. And literally the day after we filed that lawsuit, Snapchat removed those two anonymous apps on their platform and made policy changes that they would not put them back on. Um, it's very sad to me that it took my son dying and a lawsuit to make that happen because if you look at the history of anonymous apps, They have always led to cyberbullying, usually a teen suicide, they shut down and a new one comes to play. But the business model is wonderful because creating drama online keeps more young eyes on screens and increases their profits.
And what about you, Amy? How have social media companies responded?
So I would say that ultimately they haven't. The things that they've done, for example, Snapchat came out with a parent center, hard to navigate. You can see who your kid is talking to, but not what they're talking about. And it's that piece that's so important, right? It doesn't matter who they're talking to, but that the subject is really the important piece. And so if you can't, and what if your kid's doing something and you can't see that? Who's going to be held accountable for that 14-year-old kid when something goes wrong? The parent, right? So we should have access to that. We should have that option. Instagram put out teen accounts that have really amounted to nothing. See, if you're a teen and you can have to prove your age as a teen, or you can only sign up under a certain age, bad actors can do that too. So it doesn't change the fact that these people who have bad intention for our kids or trying to make money off of our kids through exploitation still have access to them. So until they make it safe by design, they are doing nothing.
hmm And how have lawmakers specifically responded? Because you both have talked a lot about, getting involved in legislative activities. Have you felt supported? Have you felt failed? Where do you stand right now as it relates to that relationship?
It's a roller coaster. I will say that 4.5-ish years ago, when I first started working in the online legislative space,
Mhm.
legislators didn't really know much about tech, and they were having the CEOs explain to them how their products work, which really amounted to smoke and mirrors.
Mhm.
And these days, we see legislators understanding the issue. We see them being able to speak to the technology and not relying on the CEOs or executives to explain it to them. So that's a really great shift. And then, a year ago, it felt like we were trudging up that hill and we were getting somewhere. And now I feel like we've just roller coaster slid back down with everything that's happened. So it's it's nice to have some legislators on our side that understand it, but we still have a huge mountain to move, and I don't see this going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, and I want to pose the same question to you, Kristen, but I want to add to this, as we talked about, you spent years working with lawmakers and you said it's been this very arduous journey. What policy changes do both of you think would have the greatest impact if implemented tomorrow? So that's kind of the second part of that question. But Kristen, talk us through your relationship with lawmakers.
Well, I agree with Amy. I think they have come a long way. We're no longer at the stages where they're asking Meta how do they make their money. They get it. A lot of them have young kids and can relate to that experience. And I would say very much um, often we meet with staffers, Emma, that are your age, and they were cyberbullied on YOLO. They understand the products. They've lost friends to fentanyl poisonings purchased over Snapchat. And so, in dealing with the youth that are now kind of taking over the staff offices, there is a greater understanding there. And so, yes, I do think that they hear us, but we are under, this kind of gets to the second part of your question, we're under such a force from big tech in the White House. We see them, we're hearing reports that they're behind closed doors making decisions about legislation. And the companies that we're regulating should be nowhere near the language of the legislation. It just doesn't make sense. And so that is like, I feel Amy's pain too, really disheartening with all the gains that we have made in recent years.
And right now, they really want to take away the opportunity to sue. And that's the thing that's working. It's the litigation that is moving things right now, as we're seeing these wins in courts. And I think the more we win, the harder they're going to try to buy their way into this administration.
And I think that second part of the question is what I'd like to see. I think it's twofold. Up front, a duty of care when they're designing these products, like what's in the Kids Online Safety Act, the Senate version, so that they don't create harmful products. I mean, there's no way that they could have thought that an anonymous app on Snapchat was going to go well. But then on the back end, we need to reform Section 230 so that the courtroom doors are opened to us, so that we can get our day in court and so that they feel the pressure up front and also on the back end when they screw up.
100%. And you mentioned, COSA, and for listeners, that's the Kids Online Safety Act. There's also the Kids Act in the House. So just last week, there's been some movement, and this week, and at the same time, you have Zuckerberg and the Meta lobbying, trying to get that duty of care, which you've talked about, removed and strip states of their ability to legislate the social media platform. So is the Kids Act in the House a win for your movement? How do you view that?
Absolutely not. It is a horrific bill. It's a complete slap in the face for all parent survivors that have worked so hard to get safety by design and the duty of care. That in the Kids Act, it's not only there, but it is explicit that there is no duty of care for these companies. They
Yeah.
cannot be held liable for suicide content that is being fed to them through algorithms that they're not looking up, or pro eating disorder content. And the monitoring in the Kids Act is that the companies create their own safety policies and they monitor them themselves. And that makes absolutely no sense. That's what's happening right now, and we
Yes.
have kids dying.
They've had that opportunity to monitor themselves and create safety, and they have proven that they're not going to do it. So the idea of make legislating that they're allowed to continue business as usual is seriously just a stab in our back, a stab in our back to these parents. I
Mhm.
mean, they clearly House. It sure seems like the House has chosen big tech over American families.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
This is not a bill that protects kids and American families. It protects big tech.
hmm hmm And it's so disheartening to hear that, especially from a young person who's been doing who's been in the fight with for COSA. It's especially when you feel really excited about a piece of legislation and it's passed and you want to see another version of it go through the House. It's just, again, and you all would understand, it's just so disheartening to see the version that's popped up. But kind of shifting the conversation a little bit, one of the missions of the Sustainable Media Center is really bringing all generations together to solve these challenges. And you've talked about, young staffers being in the room now and understanding the issue in a very acute way. What have you learned from working alongside young people in this movement? Talk us through kind of that intergenerational relationship that you have with the young people surrounding you.
Well, for me, it's I really work with middle school through high schoolers on the regular, and they are eye-opening all the time, and they are a wealth of knowledge, and we just need to ask the right questions of them, and then they'll share. But they're not going to share without being asked. And the other thing is, when I talk to parents, as parents, we don't know, right? We're still kind of learning on the fly about these things. These kids can teach us, but we tend to we're very reactive, right? If our kid came to us most of the time and said, "Hey, I sent an inappropriate picture, I don't know what to do," most parents' knee-jerk reaction might be like, "Oh my gosh, why would you do that?" And so I'm trying to get parents to think about our kiddos in a way that should something like that come up, that they think, what led my kid to doing something like that, and let's work backwards from there and help them. And so it's getting those kids to be able to be open about it and feel safe. And if they don't know who their trusted adult is, they'll call me, and then I'll help them troubleshoot it, and 9 times out of 10 it's their parents, and so I can help them craft that conversation. So I want kids to know that there are adults out here that understand and will help, and help them get to the place that they need to be.
Mhm. What about you, Kristen?
Yeah, and I'll answer that from the advocacy perspective. Some of the most impactful meetings that I've been in combined parent survivors who are also in many cases grandparents as well, and the youth advocates who have endured the harms but have survived. And I've always said that they can be the voices of our children who no longer have a voice.
Mhm.
And we've gotten comments from legislators that are like, this is great. It's nice to see an intergenerational movement. And it also sends a signal to them that these are all of their constituents that are concerned about this issue. It's powerful. I really enjoy our meetings with youth as well.
Oh yeah, we at the Sustainable Media Center, like I've said, like a lot of the work that we do, all the work that we do is just intergenerational at its core. And it to your point, it can be it can be sticky, it can be difficult, but it's very empowering to leverage the perspective and the wisdom of but all generations, specifically in the fight for social media. Because I
Mm.
think that young people have that lived experience that really, propels their narrative forward. And then obviously other generations need to have a seat at the table. So we've been really lucky to curate a lot of those conversations, and it's always super frothy and interesting. Here's a little bit more of a hypothetical scenario and situation I want to pose to both of you. If you could sit down with the CEO of every major social media company tomorrow, what is one thing that you would ask them to do? Starting with you, Kristen, and we'll go to Amy.
I would like them to think about their products in the hands of their own kids.
Mm,
And I think there's such a disconnect with what they're doing and the impact on the kids. They often send their kids to schools without any tech.
mm,
But I think that would change the game if they really think through what these different design features like snap maps could do to a kid, that's being alienated or bullied and seeing where um, all their friends are and they're not, or, that same snap map connecting predators with kids. How do you not see this? How do you not go that next step beyond engagement and profit and think about the kid behind that screen?
mhm,
I think they do think about that, which is why they don't allow their kids on these products, right? I think they need to do like I would ask them to do like an undercover boss type scenario where they go and they actually spend time with the kids who are having these experiences and a significant amount of time, not just, okay, an hour. Like spend a week with a group of kids who are living their lives on social media and
mhm,
see what that impact really is. And then maybe a little bit of empathy might develop in that space and they can make better decisions.
mhm. I think that those are phenomenal answers. And I kind of want to close the last question I have kind of wraps it back up, going back to, what brought you both here is, Social Media Victims Remembrance Day. It's obviously about remembering those we've lost, but you've both talked about how it's also about preventing future tragedies. So I want to ask you, what gives each of you hope that change is possible? Because again, like it's oftentimes feels like a David and Goliath situation, especially when you're in the legislative world and you have to deal with the big tech lobby, what lights your fire at the end of the day, specifically to keep doing the great work that you're doing?
It's those kids that we're helping. After yesterday morning, I received a message that, hey, a young lady that was at our event is actually being extorted, being plied with drugs through somebody through social media, and they're tracking her phone. Like, what do we do next? It's most of the time you don't get to know the people that you're helping. In those rare instances that we do, it is just makes if that is the only thing that comes out of Tuesday, it will have been all worth it.
Mhm.
I look at it also from the fact that 6 years ago, when both of our sons died on the same morning from different harms on Snapchat, we were alone. We were really like starting this movement. People did not talk about cyberbullying. I had no idea about fentanyl lace pills on Snapchat. And now, at the dinner of the event, our room was filled not only with parent survivors, but organizations that have stepped up to support this movement. And we are a force to be reckoned with now. And it's not just parents, it's organizations, it's youth, it's everyone. And I am so hopeful when I talk to a young parent and they ask me what I do, and they immediately say, "Oh no, we've made a plan. We are not giving our kids screens." They understand now, the awareness is there that it will rewire their brains
Mhm.
permanently if they're on screens at a young age.
I completely agree with that. I think, at least from the advocacy work that I've been doing since I started log off to where I am today, it's been about 6 years. And I've had, in the beginning, it was people had no idea what even like digital wellness was, like no concept of it. And then now, to your point, like people are developing out plans. They don't want their kids to have social media. They know that it is rewiring the brain. So I think that that level of awareness has been really, really great to watch over time. And it's just because of the efforts of wonderful people like yourselves. But I just wanted to thank you both, Amy and Kristen, for coming on and sharing your story and your insights with us today. We are so eternally grateful that you do what you do, and that you're protecting all these kids from future tragedies. So from one young person who is harmed on social media, I just really want to extend the sincerest gratitude for all the advocacy work that you are doing and are continuing to do as horrible pieces of bills go through the House and have to be, killed and stopped. So as always, we want to look forward to continuing to be in conversation with everyone in the SNC community, and we'll speak with you all again next week. So thank you both for joining.
Thank you,
Thank you
Emma.
so much, Emma.